Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to another card making video. So today we're going to be looking at the newest issue of Die Cutting Essentials. This is issue 71 and the die set that we've got free with this magazine is this Sophisticated Snowflakes, and this has got 4 versatile dies in here, lots of snippability in here, and I think there is a downloadable possible sentiment, I think it is as well. So let's take a quick look in the magazine first. So we've got the die cutting hints and tips, which I think is brilliant. Of course, lots of inspiration. So I think this die set is really great actually. There's a lot of versatility in here in terms of you do have a really great sized sentiment, you've got that snowflake element, and then you've got that kind of edge die which doesn't have a cutting edge along the one side, meaning then that you can leave it attached to your cardstock. But in the magazines there's loads of different kinds of way of using it, using lots of different colour palettes. These are more winter birthday kinds of cards, and I think it's just really great for lots of different kinds of projects. Take a quick look at what comes free in the next issue. So we've got this Let's Celebrate. There's 23 dies in here. You've got the Let's Celebrate, you've got the candle, there's numbers in there as well. So really looking forward to next month's issue. But for now, let's get into making today's card. So I'm going to be making a slimline card. I'm making my own card base here. I've taken some grey cardstock. I thought this would go really nice with the colour palette that we're going to use for this card. So I cut this piece of cardstock down to 8.5 inch by 7 inch and then scored at 3.5, and this is going to create us our landscape slimline card base. So the first thing I want to do is just cut this large snowflake sort of border from some scrap cardstock just so I can see exactly how it's going to cut. So along the top you don't have a cutting edge. This means then that this will stay attached to your cardstock, and this is actually a really beautiful die. So you can see here you've got lots of pieces that comes out, and you've got some really good shapes in here, something just a little bit different, not quite your standard sort of snowflake shapes, and you do have then just a couple of the smaller sort of snowflakes and stars that you could use on your project as well. So I really love how this looks. You also are able to extend this pattern as well, and it's really easy to do. So along each of the left and the right hand side you don't have a cutting edge that goes sort of up and down, they just go straight flat out, so you're able then to carry on this design really easily. So you can see here I've die cut this actually sort of 2.5 times because this was just a little bit too small for my matte and layer size. So I've already pre-cut those, and I just used a die that had that sort of stitched effect around the edge just to add a little bit more detail. But you can see that I've extended this, like I said, sort of 2.5 times. It was okay. The half a time, so the very end of it, was a little bit too far away, so you've got sort of a bigger gap in there, but by the time we finish our project you're not going to be able to see that. So this is this is going to be one of my mattes and layers. This is going to be one of my backgrounds, and I'm just doing some ink blending with the Distress Oxide. So this is Spun Sugar, and I'm putting this sort of 2/3 of the way up our background piece. So what we're going to do on the top section of this panel, we're going to attach our really beautiful snowflake border. And I do really love how this looks where it just blends into the white, but I did decide to use the Picked Raspberry just to have a darker shade at the top. We're going to blend it really nicely, and it's just going to give that really nice sort of blended gradient effect. So I didn't want to do sort of traditional Christmassy colours. A lot of the cards I've made recently are sort of very traditional. I wanted to do something a little different, and I kind of was inspired by the inspiration within the magazine to just use this kind of combination of sort of grey, pink and blue. So hopefully you guys like it as well. So you can see that I've come back in now with my Spun Sugar just to help blend out that Picked Raspberry and give us that really smooth blended look. And if we just bring in that border again, you can sort of see how this is going to look. To give our background just a little bit more interest, I'm going to do some splatter. So this is the Cosmic Shimmer mica powder. So all you do is just mix this with some just plain clean water, and you get this really beautiful kind of paint, and it's got some really beautiful sort of shiny properties within here. So I'm just really watered this down so we can get that sort of flicking motion from the paintbrush. Just bear in mind, be careful what you've got around you, because doing it this way, it does go everywhere. And I've left that to one side just to let that dry. I don't want to kind of smudge any of those sort of splatter marks we've got, but it's going to just show up really beautifully in the light. So the next layer I've got is this scalloped edge layer. So this is going to be in between our card base and then the pink panel we've just blended. And I'm just taking some tumbled glass. So of course I could have used some coloured paper, but I decided that I really wanted the tumbled glass. I wanted to have more of a sort of pastel look, so I thought I would just sort of blend around the outside. And the really great thing with doing this is you don't have to go all the way to the middle, you don't have to be particularly careful because you're not really going to see too much of it. So I wanted to keep this panel, this snowflake panel, white because I thought it looked really nice against that sort of pink background, but I wanted to give it something a little extra. So I decided to use some Paper Mania holographic embossing powder. So this is clear embossing powder with glitter, and it just gives it such a beautiful look. So I took my Versamark clear sticky ink pad. I just did half at a time just so I had a piece to hold on to. I basically just dabbed the ink pad all over it and then just poured the embossing powder over the top and then heat set it. So like I said, I did that in two sort of settings. I did half and then half again, and it keeps it white, but it just gives it such a beautiful shiny look. So I'm going to be die cutting the other three dies from this set. So we've got the Snowflake and the Merry Christmas. And I really love that they've done this as two separate dies. It means that you've got a much more versatility. They're really great sizes. So if you have a stamp that says happy, you can then mix that in with the Christmas die, and I think that will look really great. What I'm doing now is I've taken a piece of scrap cardstock. I'm going to use this square to cut 3 snowflakes, but to make life easier, I've just popped some double-sided tape on the back of this. This is one of my hacks from a previous video, and it's just going to make it so much easier when I come to stick these down. I don't have to get messy using any glue or anything like that. So, and I've also got then a scrap cardstock that I use to create our card base. So this is that grey cardstock, and I've done the same and just popped 2 pieces of double-sided tape along the back. So now we're going to sort of start putting the card together and bringing all our elements in. So what I'm going to do is use, rather than using the double-sided foam pads, I'm going to use some funky foam. Again, this is another hack that I have shared with you guys. This is just going to help give the a really even support for this panel. I wanted to give it some dimension and sort of raise up off our blue scalloped edge layer, but this, like I said, just gives a really great sort of even support across the whole panel. You could, of course, do this so much neater than what I'm doing here. You could, because I use a die to cut out this panel, you could then just cut it the same size and trim it down a little bit. You're not really going to see any of it here, so I'm not sort of too worried, to be honest. It was cut just a tiny bit too short, so I did end up just cutting that little slither just to help support the bottom. I have previously used glue. I just wanted to see what it was like using some double-sided tape, and I think it worked just as well. It was just a little bit harder to get the backing tape off it. So now we have got our foam all on there. I was going to stick it down, but I decided just to pop my elements on first of all. So for this panel, because some of the embossing powder had dried on the back of this, and I know when I've used double-sided tape and glue before, when I'm sticking something onto a Distress Oxide background, it doesn't always stick very well. So I opted for a piece of red liner tape. So this is really strong double-sided tape, and this is going to keep everything in place. I didn't really think about sort of the snowflakes along the bottom. These were really sort of sticking up. So I then decided to use my dotty tape pen from Crafter's Companion, and I just sort of ran that over sort of certain pieces of it. I was happy for some pieces to stick up and have a little bit of dimension, but sort of the bigger pieces, I wanted to have that sort of stuck down. So I could have done that before, but it worked just as well doing it afterwards. So now I put some more double-sided tape on the back of our foam and attach that to our blue panel. And I think just the colour combination and then that really beautiful sort of metallic splatter we've got on that pink background, I think it just works really nicely together. For then our Merry Christmas sentiment, I used one of the Spectrum Noir shimmer pens. Now I have to be honest, when it came to the Merry, I kind of flooded the M, just where I squeezed it a little bit too hard just to get a little bit more glitter out, and it does break, you'll see here in a second, that it sort of comes apart, but I didn't recut it, I just took the tape off the back and just sort of matched them back up again, and I don't think you really kind of notice. But all I'm doing is just lining up my Merry where I want that to be, and then I do take this T-square ruler just to help get the Christmas in line, make sure it's all lined up really nicely. So if you don't have a T-square ruler, I really would recommend it. It's been a really great tool to have just on hand. I always have it next to my desk, and I do think it really makes a difference. The only thing that was missing from that bit is I could have taken out the dot for the eye in Christmas. That might have just finished the sentiment off a little bit, but I only noticed it as I was cleaning out the die afterwards that it was in there. But next time I use it, I need to remember to get that little dot out, because I think that'll just finish the sentiment really nicely. So with the 3 snowflakes now, like I said earlier, I've cut 3 of them, and I wanted to sort of place them in the middle and at either end, just to help with those gaps where the die has finished. You can see along the edges, you've just got the 2 sort of quite a block piece of empty space. So I thought that would just help kind of fill that in nicely. And again, just adds a little bit more dimension to the card. So really the last thing to do for this now is just attach our panel onto our card base, and that's our card finished. So I really enjoyed creating a card using a different colour palette. And like I said, recently I've gone very, very traditional, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. And again, that's where then using the magazine for inspiration really comes in handy, because I was just looking at some of the samples and I really felt like doing this sort of colour combination, which isn't a colour combination that I sort of usually do. So I really love how this sort of came out, and I think it works really, really lovely together. So that is now our cards all finished. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you like this card. If you do, please give this video a big thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. Just to remind you, this was made using the Die Cutting Essentials magazine. This is issue 71 and it is Sophisticated Snowflakes. So like I said, if you do like the card, please give the video a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please do so you don't miss out on any future videos. That's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching and happy crafting.